Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to Pitch Talk.
We are fans of football dropping vlogs, videos and podcasts on the beautiful game.
Check out our videos on YouTube and Instagram's IGTV,
including special feature segments,
5 minutes with the G,
the Straight Shootin View,
coaching with JBK. We produce, record and edit video content
and audio on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts,
Verbal, Podomatic,
Anchor,
Spotify
and other podcast platforms.
Join the Pitch Talk revolution on Twitter, Instagram,
Facebook
and www.pitch-talk.com.
The pitch is where we eat.
The pitch is where we sleep.
And the pitch is where we talk.
I can see you now. I can see you now and then. I can see you now.
Welcome to
the Straight Shootin View.
Hey everybody, what is up? Straight Shootin LJA here, and apologies for the raspiness in my voice, just a little under the weather, but still wanted to bring you an episode of the Straight Shootin View. So welcome to another episode of the Straight Shootin View. Now this episode is going to be a little different. It's one of them where it's going to be featuring a couple of my co-hosts. JBK, Coach JBK of Coaching with JBK is going to jump on, and Nathan Arsenal is going to jump on with me as well. And we're going to be talking about Chelsea and their recent spending spree, especially in the January 2023 transfer window. Spent a hell of a lot of money, and because of the money they've spent and the level of money they've spent, well, UEFA have actually closed a financial fair play loophole, but you'll hear more about that in a minute. But yeah, here's our next episode of the Straight Shootin View about Chelsea and their January 2023 spending. See you on the other side, peeps.
You know I hate conspiracy theories. I hate a good conspiracy theory because most of them, I'm not a fan of conspiracy theories, not at all. But you know what, I just thought to myself, potentially my next Straight Shootin View episode is going to be about Chelsea and them exploiting the financial fair play loophole with the long contracts and amortization. That's the word. Spreading the cost, so essentially paying for players on finance. But yeah, it's one of them. It's not a new thing. Obviously, Barcelona did it to us with Coutinho. They spread that cost over 4 years, and that was contingent on them qualifying for the Champions League. But leaving that aside, I don't know if I'm the only one who thinks it, but you know how Chelsea have been buying a shed load of players since Todd Boehly took the club over? And also in January, I swear they've bought like another seven players. Do you think that they're bracing themselves for a transfer ban? I know it sounds weird to say, but it's one of them. Why else would you buy that many players? Because hoarding is one thing, but they're spending massive money buying in a bunch of players. And it's like, are you worried that the window's going to shut and there's a ban coming? I don't know. It's just a weird one. I know it's a bit of an odd theory, but literally just made me think about that when I was thinking about next Straight Shootin View episode. So let me know your thoughts on that one, because I don't know. It just seems to me that this loophole's been closed, but it's just weird that you'd buy that many players in a January window, spending 400-500 million. It's just really strange to me. It's just really, really odd.
In terms of what you're saying in terms of the conspiracy, and obviously it could be, didn't think of it, and there could be something to look into there. They've had one before. Whether that's the situation that they had before and they didn't necessarily deal with it, probably the same thing as what's going on again. My only thing is, I don't think my only thing around the conspiracy is I don't think he knows what good football is. I think he just bought it and just said, right, I'm gonna buy all of these players, and you go and deal with it. And that's what it was, if you remember, back when Chelsea brought in Roman Abramovich, where he bought a shed load of players. He pretty much bought 25 players, I didn't know where to really stick them. So I think this is Chelsea being Chelsea, if I'm honest. But let's see what happens. If there is a financial fair play ban, then hopefully it comes up that it happens for 2 seasons, not just 2 transfer windows.
See, where this, for me, where it becomes interesting, yeah, it's definitely that parallel of, yeah, when Roman Abramovich first came over. Yeah. I mean, that direct comparison is brilliant. But, yeah, I mean, I think it's one of them ones where it's like Graham Potter's between a rock and a hard place because all these players have come in. I don't know if he's signed off on them. There's an interesting part as well because you look at some of the players that came in during the Abramovich era. You look at Fernando Torres being the example that sticks out like a sore thumb. Ancelotti didn't want him. You could see he was not an Ancelotti buy. So, but it was one of them ones. Roman Abramovich wanted him like years before when he saw Torres tearing it up with us. So, yeah, I mean, it is one of them where some people have said that Todd Boehly is basically playing Football Manager. And yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's like it's kind of like when the Glazers first came in. The Glazers knew nothing about football. Some arguably would say they still don't, with the amount of managers they've gone through and the job they've done at United. But it is one of them where it's just like Boehly, I think, is just like, throw money at it, let the manager deal with it. And I think it's going to be one of them ones where Graham Potter potentially will end up as a sacrificial lamb. Because if he's gotten all these players in, I think, 8 players in this January window, which is insane. After I was predicting it was going to be a quiet window, apart from Chelsea, it pretty much would have been. But it's one of them where it's like Chelsea have spent so much that they can't afford to not make top 4. And they're in 9th, 10th as we speak now. So they have got an uphill battle. So it's one of them, and I said, if they don't make top 4, then how are they going to balance those books? Because them as a club, and I've said this before during the Abramovich era, them as a club are not making that much money to be able to spend 200, 300, 400 million per window. Because as I said before, Chelsea got very lucky that Roman Abramovich basically wasn't allowed to call in that debt that they had, which I think was like £1 billion, that Chelsea had to Abramovich's, the holding company, which is obviously Abramovich's company. So they were very lucky that debt didn't get called in because they'd be done. So they're not making the sort of money to be able to be spending that. So yeah, it's an interesting one because once again, it's a case of the club doesn't have money, the owner does.
Yeah, I think you're right, Liam. I saw heard your voice note about Chelsea spending, financial fair play, etc. And I do suspect that they probably anticipate a transfer ban, or what they're doing is they're trying to utilize any loophole to get around the transfer ban. Hence the implementation of these 8-year contracts on all of the players that they've signed over the last few weeks / months. I would love this to absolutely blow up in their face. You know, when you've procured a player on a 8-year contract, if he flops, you're not going to get rid of him. That player's comfortable knowing he's getting the money that he's getting for 8 years. He ain't going to move. Who's going to buy him? So Chelsea are really relying on 10 players coming good. Do you know what I mean? They spent a lot of money and you know, obviously there's been a bit reactive, FIFA and UEFA, etc., in saying that now, you know, you're going to have to essentially make sure that you can only spread your payments over a 5-year period as opposed to the 8-year period that Chelsea have been doing, because ultimately now they can then just do 10 million a year per player. It's a joke the way they've tried to do it, but nice. I don't know if from what I understand, there seems to be some sort of gentleman's agreement where when he bought the club, he sort of indicated that he would do a lot of spending. So they bought, I mean, I just think Chelsea's spending has been very scattergun. I don't think it's had any real direction. or plan around it. They've just literally buying anyone that they can, and they're now going to fit it around whatever it is they're trying to do at the club. They need to offload a plethora of players in the summer, so it's going to be a period of instability. And as for Graham Potter, he's essentially a sitting duck, because as soon as the results don't go their way, i.e. they don't get Champions League or whatever, they're going to get rid of him, and then they'll be back to square one under a new manager. That new manager is going to have his own way of playing, but then you got an owner now who is taking the reins and doing it. So, listen, fuck Chelsea anyway, but yeah. So we'll see what happens. They got Fulham Friday night. They're 10th in the league. Hope they don't get Champions League, because that will have an impact on FIFA, on the fair play rules as well. So I just hope it blows up in their face, as I said.
Now, you know what? That's a good point you make about basically players being comfortable because they're on such a long contract. Because people, it's funny. People have said, when we signed Klopp to that 6-year extension years back, after about 2 years, and it was one of them people like, that's madness. This and that. He's just going to get complacent. And it's like, well, no, it's a vote of confidence. But with players, like signing them like this, it's a little bit different with a player and a manager. And even though, yeah, I think you're right in saying that if a player's there for 6-7 years, they're not going to want to leave because they're getting a massive paycheck. Every now and then, you will get an exception, like Nathan Ake, who obviously left Chelsea to go Bournemouth because he wanted first team football, and then ended up at Man City and becoming a winner. You will get exceptions like that, but it's not often that happens. A lot of players are happy to coast by, and I can't blame them, to be perfectly frank. I can't blame them financially. They're happy to coast by and be like, you know what? I'll just collect a paycheck. I will collect a paycheck and do this for purely financial reasons. Fine. And that's all well and good. But if you bought 10 players, 8, 9, 10 players in one window, you've already registered a squad of 25. So obviously you've got to re-register that stuff in January as well. January, February, you've got to re-register that squad. Then you've got to change up your Champions League squad. Because imagine coming in from, say, a Champions League team like Mudryk, for instance, just coming from a Champions League team. Imagine he doesn't make the Champions League squad. How unhappy would you be coming from a team playing European football to going to Chelsea and just sitting there and not playing any European football at all if you're not picked in the squad? There's that. So as I said before, Potter's been put between a rock and a hard place. And yeah, he is definitely a sitting duck. He was always going to be anyway for replacing Thomas Tuchel when he did. So it is one of them where sometimes you fall on your own sword. And he could have stayed at Brighton, kept doing what he's doing. But he wanted to go to Chelsea, try there. It's like, you got to know that that's a managerial graveyard. You don't get time there. I mean, even the transfer ban that they got previously, it gave Lampard a bit more time, because it would have looked pretty messed up if you had fired someone when they've when they've just been handed a transfer ban. Because it's like, well, what could I have done? I can't bring anyone in. So you could easily go unfair dismissal on that one. But I just look at it as, yeah, Chelsea's approach has been very scattergun. Because I saw a graphic that's like, Chelsea's squad depth. And they've got like literally 3 players in every position. You can only register 25 at one time. It's like the Nottingham Forest thing at the beginning of the season, where they bought a shed load of players and it took time to click, and still their results have not been like overly consistent. So they're picked up recently, but obviously that's taken time from August. So it's a crazy one, and I'm with you. I'm hoping Chelsea fall on their own sword, because they've just reverted to type. And this was just like when, as Jamie said, when Abramovich first came in, I was just like, bugger it, I got enough money, I'll just buy 2 complete teams. And then Chelsea ended up basically buying the league and bored us all to tears in that first season doing it. But if you're going to do that approach, you have to have an experienced manager at the helm to be able to not only do man management, but controlling egos. And if everybody's getting paid huge money, it's like you got to be able to command that level of respect as well. And it's, I said, like, Graham Potter's been put in a very difficult position. I wonder how many of those players he signed off on, as mentioned earlier. Was it 1? Was it 2? Was it 5? Was he not involved at all? So that's where stuff starts becoming interesting as well, in terms of, I said, how many players did he sign off on? How many of those does he feel he can work with? How many of those fit into his squad plan? So, yeah, man, it's all about how are Chelsea going to give all of those players that they've signed to those long contracts with that loophole, are they going to have those players around for that long? Are they going to send them all out on loan for 2, 3, 4 years, like a Tammy Abraham, like a Patrick Bamford, and never ever give them a chance in the first team? What's going to happen there? I mean, there's so much with that. And FIFA and UEFA are generally reactive anyway, so wouldn't rely on them for anything. But so on them, if they're going to remember how they stung teams like Monaco among others, let's see what they do here. Because at the end of the day, it's like you shouldn't have these kind of loopholes in place. It's like when the homegrown rule came in, and I was the Premier League's homegrown rule, and I was like, well, Emiliano Insua is a walking loophole. Same with Cesc Fabregas with you guys. But it was one of them where it's like, oh, you're considered homegrown if you've been at that club for, what was it? I think it was 2, 3, 4 years before your 21st birthday. Emiliano Insua had been with us since he was 16. Same with Fabregas at Arsenal. So both of them technically count as homegrown. Loopholes. And that's an easy loophole to see. So it's kind of like UEFA have actually basically encouraged this kind of behavior by Chelsea. All you got to really do is just look past the headlines and be like, oh yeah, there's a loophole to be exploited. Good, let's do it. And Chelsea have done it, and now nobody else can do it. So in theory, Chelsea have got a really unfair advantage. But just because they exploited the loophole and they were the first to do it doesn't make it right. But hey, you got to give them props that they've done it, but I think it's all gonna come home to roost at some point for Potter and for Boehly, because then, as you said, they're gonna have a clear out during the summer, because they're gonna have a load of players who are gonna be unhappy because they know they're not gonna get the game time that they want. So that's got, as I said earlier, that's got to be managed. But that's Chelsea's problem.
And that is another episode of the Straight Shootin View about Chelsea and their major spending. What are your thoughts on it? Are they bracing themselves for a transfer ban by signing as many players as they can? Or is Todd Boehly just basically playing Football Manager and signing anybody he likes the look of just randomly? Is it a scattergun approach by Chelsea Football Club in terms of their January 2023 transfer window? They've been the busiest side, and that's including Nottingham Forest too. But www.pitch-talk.com is the official website. At Pitch Talk on Twitter, tweet with us, follow us, see what we're up to. Facebook.com/Pitch Talk. Become a fan, become a friend, become a member of the group. Join the footballing revolution we are working so hard to create. At Pitch Talk on Instagram for vlog previews and much, much more. Also, we're on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, TuneIn Radio, Player FM, Ghana, GAANA, Verbal, VURBL. So many platforms. Wherever you catch your podcast, wherever you grab them, wherever you download them, wherever you stream them from, that's where we are as well. YouTube.com/Pitch Talk for all of our video material as well. We're also on TikTok and we're also on Reddit. Search for Pitch Talk on both of those platforms too. I have been Straight Shootin LJA, and until next time, thank you for joining myself, Coach JBK, and also Nathan Arsenal here on the Straight Shootin View. Take care, peeps.
Join the Pitch Talk revolution.
Check out the official Pitch Talk website,
www.pitch-talk.com.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to Pitch Talk.
We are fans of football dropping vlogs, videos and podcasts on the beautiful game.
Check out our videos on YouTube and Instagram's IGTV,
including special feature segments,
5 minutes with the G,
the Straight Shootin View,
coaching with JBK,
We produce, record and edit video content.
and
audio on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts,
Verbal, Podomatic,
Anchor.
Spotify.
and other podcast platforms.
join the Pitch Talk revolution on Twitter, Instagram.
Facebook.
And www.pitch-talk.com.
The pitch is where we eat.
The pitch is where we sleep.
And the pitch is where we talk.
I can see you now.